The meeting of the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Garcia.
Present.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Here.
Director Jackson has asked to be excused. Director Seamson.
Present.
And Chair Herndon.
Present.
We have 4 members present, and Director Zombor has also joined the meeting.
The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so, and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being conducted from the Central Services Building in order to allow as much public access and participation as possible. This meeting is also being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799. E introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
Thank you. For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it to our secretary, Ms. Koala. We have no virtual speakers registered. When you're called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a chance to speak, the chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictate that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public committee members or the administration, are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who engages in such harassing or intimidating words or actions will immediately be asked to cease. If such behavior continues, a recess will be called and the offending parties will be removed from the meeting. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, the individual will not be allowed to rejoin the meeting. Also, no one other than the members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and its committees. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page of the MPS website. Now let's begin. Madam Secretary, item 1.
Item 1 is action to reaffirm Administrative Policy 2.14, Assessment Ethics, Administrative Policy 2.15, Research and Survey Proposals, Administrative Policy 7.03, School Year, School Calendar, and Administrative Policy 7.04, School Day. The administration recommends that the board reaffirm these policies, which are attached to this item.
Would administration please present this item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. This evening, we're requesting your approval to reform Administrative Policy 2.14, Assessment Ethics, and 2.15, Research and Survey Proposal, 1.03, School Year and School Calendar, and 7.04, School Day. I have Dr. Melanie Stewart, Director of Research and Assessment and Data, with me to walk us through this item. Dr. Stewart?
Thank you. Good evening, President Herndon, members of the committee. As you review the policies, Policy 214, Assessment Ethics Policy, this one still is very much best practices of what we should expect from assessments that we use and administer within the district. Administrative Policy 607 that it references, that is about employee rules of conduct in regard to assessment, and that one we will be bringing at a later date. Administrative Policy 2.15, Research and Survey Proposals. Again, these are our guiding principles when individuals within or external to the district are looking to do research. These are our guiding principles to make certain that we are doing good research, but also making certain that we are not interrupting the day and students, et cetera, in the process of research. Administrative Policy 7.03 and 04 align to the instructional hours and practices to make certain that the district is meeting all instructional hours for our schools. And these will both be asked to be reaffirmed. If you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Gokul Gandhi.
In Administrative Policy 7.03 for the school calendar, do we want to include a date by which we will ratify that calendar every year? Or like before,
President Herndon, Director Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, there is, that would be a choice that if you would want that to be made. There is not by statute any time that we have to approve a calendar by. So that would be an internal thing that we would want to go forward with.
and I guess I would ask my committee members if they think that would be something that would benefit our families, or Mr. Chasen, if you could comment on it at all from an efficiency perspective. I just know that this year we had some discussion, and we pushed it a little close, and I know that was a more holistic, when do we start schools, but I also know that in the time that I've been on the board, we've had conversations about, okay, what's the calendar going to look like, and when are they going to approve it?
Mr. Chasen.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I'll piggyback a little bit what Dr. Mel said. There isn't a statutory requirement. From an accountability and efficiency lens, certainly the longer the runway, the easier it is for families to plan. That is frequently one of the concerns that is raised during the calendar setting process. The introduction of a no later than date, I think it provides some expectation setting of the administration of the district more broadly, including all of its stakeholders, that you can be assured that no later than this date, you can have some assurances about what that future school calendar may look like. It's certainly worthy of the board's consideration. I know it's not part of the recommendation this evening, but it could also be a discussion raised at another date and brought back once maybe perhaps more additional stakeholder input was received in that process as well. So that's a quick look through the OAE lens on that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other directors wish to speak on the item? Director Simpson.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Well, just, a follow-up to administration, like when, I know the date that we get that calendar does vary quite a bit. Is there a target date that you think would be reasonable that we could add?
Administration.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, We would say November would be a good time.
I don't know, I guess, yeah, I mean, I'd just like to hear from my other members of the committee if they think we should take action on that tonight or get feedback from
Director
other
Garcia.
people.
I mean, I think in my perspective, the reasoning behind setting a date is essentially like what Mr. Chasen brought up of just allowing parents more leeway on planning. I am interested in regards to, I know it was also mentioned, ability to include stakeholders. I know in the specific policy it mentions a couple. Is there any, is that how we usually do it? Is there other folks that we usually include but aren't necessarily spelled out here?
President Herndon, Director Garcia, members of the committee, Melanie Stewart, Director of Research, Assessment, and Data. We often work with our union. We also look to community members, look at religious leaders to be sensitive to various religious holidays. We look at within the district to make certain that we are getting the input and making certain that we are not scheduling days that would cause hardship for families as such.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, and also just to add that we work with CISA as well as surrounding school districts to try to make sure, in all possible, if we could kind of be unified with days, because there may be students from various families that been trying to be on the same schedule.
Perfect. So I guess
Thank you. Any follow-up?
Yep, the follow-up question would then be, if we do set a date where we're aiming to have this ready for discussion, would that impede any part of the involvement process?
No.
Then I would be open to including that.
Thank you. Director Gokul Gandhi.
So then just to clarify, no later than November or no later than October? Because does it need to be done in November, or does it, do you understand what I'm asking? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, no later than November.
Okay, so then, Madam Secretary, can I make a motion? Okay.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, I move that we include language in Administrative Policy 7.03 that states the calendar is approved no later than November 30th, I think, is the last day of November.
Okay. Madam Secretary, do you have it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, would you please?
If I could clarify the motion, is that to approve the administration's recommendation with modifying Administrative Policy 7.03?
Yes.
Okay. I have the motion.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
On Director Gokul Gandhi's motion to approve the administration's recommendations with Administrative Policy 7.03, school year, school calendar, to be modified in Section 2, that the calendar is to come back no later than November 30th. On that motion, Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Simpson,
Aye.
Chair Herndon.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 2, action on a request to reaffirm Administrative Policy 7.34, final evidence of proficiency, and approve revisions to Administrative Procedure 7.34, final evidence of proficiency. Madam Chair, the administration has requested that this item be withdrawn.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With that, let's go to the next item.
Madam Chair, before we go on to the next item, I do want to say we had an individual register to speak, Mr. Jay Bullock. He also did submit written comments, which have been forwarded to the board.
Thank you.
Item 3 is an update with possible action on the district's policy review process. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the Office of Board Governance please present the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In August, the board directed the Office of Board Governance with the administration and the Office of Accountability and Efficiency to bring back a plan for policy review. Governance, the administration, and OAE have been collaborating on this work, and this item is being presented as follow-up. MPS has about 335 policies, procedures, and rules that make up its policy manual. In conjunction with that review, we recognize that it may also be necessary to review related handbooks, manuals, or other guidebooks to ensure consistency. As far as when we expect the work to be complete, we've identified a few factors that are going to affect that. One would be staffing. The bulk of this work is going to fall on the administration, and we have several work areas that are short-staffed. So we want to ensure that we're going to proceed in a way that won't place an undue burden on any one work area. And we also recognize that we have some policies that are going to require a more intensive review, but we have others that will be relatively simple to work through. So we're going to kind of do a mix of both so that it spreads that work out a little more evenly. We're also exploring the possibility of partnering with consultants for some of the lift too. Another consideration would be the need for legal review. We have a lot of policies that concern legal compliance, and in doing this work, we may also identify a need for new policies to be drafted. And in both of those cases, part of the process would be sending them to the Office of the City Attorney to ensure legal compliance. So depending on their workflow, some of the work may be paused for a bit. But the biggest factor would be the frequency with which we're able to bring policy revisions back to the board. Currently, the board's rules require that anything having to do with the policy manual has to come through LRP. That committee by board rule meets at the call of the chair. And in the last couple of years, LRP has only met 2 or 3 times. So we're hoping that LRP could possibly meet more often to allow for more even spacing with the work. And I will share that I plan to bring an item to the March meeting for the whole board to talk about how you might want to restructure your committees or restructure meeting frequency. So I'm hoping that at that meeting you might consider directing our office to schedule a specific number of LRP meetings in the upcoming year. Another thing that you may want to consider is that this project involves kind of taking an overview of the entire policy manual. So if all of those items only go to LRP, that means that only LRP members would be taking that deep dive into policy. So you might also consider revising the board's rules so that instead of policies going only to LRP, they go to whichever one of your committees most closely fits the subject matter of the policy. And that way all board members would have an opportunity to dive into policy a little bit more. So that'll be more of a discussion for the March meeting, but we're hoping you'll consider that. So this review work is already underway. We have planned to prioritize the work based on a number of factors. One is ensuring that all policies align to federal, state, and local laws, as well as best practices. We also want to ensure, as I mentioned before, that our policies, if there is a corresponding procedure or some other guidebook, manual, handbook, that those are all consistent and current with how we currently operate. We also will have an eye on the strategic plan. We want to make sure that the policies are in alignment to that plan. And it may be possible that we identify some policies that no longer meet the current mission and vision of the district and might actually be rescinded. The board indicated that you wanted every policy to indicate either the individual or the department that's responsible, so we'll be checking for that. And in addition to that, we're going to make sure that there is a monitoring and evaluation function incorporated into each policy. So that might be a report that's required to come forward, something that has to be filed with some outside agency, some way for everyone to have an understanding of how the policy has been facilitated, how well it's working, that kind of thing. And then it's also important to remember that policies aren't just for those of us internal to the district. Policies are also used by the public to help inform them about district operations and expectations. So we're going to ensure that the wording of each policy is something that someone without inside expertise would be able to understand. And as part of that, we've noticed a number of policies that have outdated terminology, so we're going to ensure that the word choices are clear for the public and relevant to modern operations. So thinking down the road, we also want to explore the possibility of having policies available in other languages, particularly those that are of greater public interest. And then we want to research web-based platforms that would allow the policy manual to be more searchable and make it easier to do policy research. Right now, they're on our website as standalone PDFs, which really doesn't make it easy to find what you need, particularly if you don't even know what you're looking for, and we recognize that. So moving forward with the project, the Office of Board Governance will manage this particular project, and then going forward, we'll monitor that 5-year review process going forward. So this was a work of the administration, OAE, OBG. We're all here, and we can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. I see all of the directors sitting here chomping at the bit because as new board directors, we found everything like, especially the policies, to be rather cumbersome. And I know one of my biggies was the lack of accompanying procedures. I know that all policies would not necessarily have a procedure, but some of the ones that are pretty in-depth should, purposely because the board actually changes every couple of years. And so for onboarding a new board director is very difficult. With that, are there any directors that wish to speak on this item? Director Gokul Gandhi.
You can call me Dr. Gokul Gandhi. That sounds
Yeah.
fun.
I gave you promotion.
Ooh, I don't want the work that comes with the promotion. I am so excited for this web-based policy that, I love a website that has searchable items. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I hope that we can think creatively about those search functions and that, maybe it goes back right to our main website with any corresponding, say, like with the calendar. So in the policy item, you can click on the calendar and it'll take you right to the corresponding website function. So, maybe we think about getting someone who is an expert in user design, user experience to come along and help with that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you for this. I think that, just being very cognizant of what the limitations can be, or I guess like the barriers for the work continuing in a timeline of our choosing, I think is important for us to know about. I think staffing is going to be a big one. When I'm looking at the strategies for mitigation, I know that it's listed on here, partnership with outside experts. So I guess like my question is, I know when we were first looking at this idea of policy, like systemizing a policy review, we had talked about a couple partners, specifically looking at the field of what other similar comparable districts are doing, like who they're utilizing for their reviews of policies. Can you just speak on that? Because I feel like that's something that I feel work that has been done that is not necessarily reflected on, these slides.
We've identified, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Director Garcia, we've identified a few organizations that do policy work, WASB, Council of Great City Schools. Neola was highly recommended, and I'm trying to reach out to them. And I happened to be talking to somebody today about a completely different issue, and she mentioned working with them and spoke very positively of how it is to work with them and what they're able to do. So that's definitely on the table.
Perfect.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Zomber.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. So yeah, this is like music to my ears. I'm so excited about this work, and thank you to everyone. I know it's a really heavy lift, so thank you for diving into this and coming up with a plan. I just wanted to comment on the revising board rules to allow committees to also do this work. I think because there are so many, I'm strongly in favor of that. If that's something that other of my colleagues would consider, I think it, it makes sense, if you're talking about policies related to something financial, like you should talk about it in AFP. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Thank you. Director Gokul-Gandhi.
Madam Secretary, could you bring a revised board rule for recommendation to our next meeting?
My plan would be to offer some suggestions.
Got it.
It would be
Okay.
difficult to wordsmith, not knowing what you want to do, or what you may want to do with other committees.
Okay, great. But that is.
Yeah,
part
but
of the
my
agenda.
thinking was you would have a preliminary discussion in March.
Okay.
And then if you did ultimately decide to change things, I could bring that at the April meeting for approval, and then you would be ready to go with the start of the next board year.
And we couldn't adopt whatever we decided in March, right?
You could.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so everyone's good with that? Madam Secretary, do we have any members of the public?
We had no one registered to speak on this item, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other items on this meeting's agenda. Just a reminder that the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel will begin their meeting at approximately 6:30.
Thank you. There being no further business before this committee, this meeting is adjourned. 30-minute break.